Good morning. It's June 7th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. Let's begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with South Korea becoming a non-permanent UNSC member. For the third time, the country will take a seat at the United Nations Security Council as one of the 10 non-permanent members for 2 years starting next year. Our On Point takes a closer look at what this means. The World Bank has lifted its 2023 global growth outlook from 1.7% to 2.1%, but also noted higher interest rates and the Ukraine crisis will take a bigger toll on next year's results. A major dam collapse in Ukraine leads to a mass evacuation due to flooding. Both Ukraine and Russia blame each other for the destruction. South Korea has been elected to the UN Security Council after an 11-year break. South Korea's ambassador to the UN pointed to the North Korean issue among the top agendas, vowing to expand cooperation not only with the US and Japan, but also with China and Russia. Lee Kyung-eun reports.
Republic of Korea, 180.
South Korea was elected to the UN Security Council on Tuesday, winning support of more than two-thirds of the UN General Assembly. The two-year term as a non-permanent member kicks off at the start of next year. This marks the country's return to the Security Council after 11 years and only the third time it has been on the council. Also elected for a temporary seat in the 15-member body are Algeria, Guyana, Sierra Leone, and Slovenia, representing their respective regions. South Korea's ambassador to the UN, Hwang Jin-guk, pledged to expand South Korea's role as global pivotal state, that by increasing cooperation with developing countries, given the nation's own transition from a global aid recipient to a donor nation. He also pointed to North Korean issues as a key agenda amid increased provocations by the regime.
We are ready to deal with other significant regional and thematic Security Council issues, including counterterrorism and the long-standing DPRK issues, both nuclear and the human rights situation.
South Korea may have a stronger voice on North Korean issues now that it is part of the only UN body that can make legally binding decisions like imposing sanctions and authorizing use of force. The ambassador stressed enhancing cooperation with the US and Japan on the matter, highlighting the three taking UN Security Council seats together for the first time since 1997. However, as the body cannot make a decision if there is a veto from one of the 5 permanent members, the ambassador vowed to expand cooperation with China and Russia, despite their stance on North Korea unlikely to change. Lee Kyung-eun, Arirang News.
While recognizing difficulties in taking action against North Korea due to China and Russia's veto power at the UN Security Council, the U.S. says Washington won't tolerate violations by Pyongyang. U.S. State Department Undersecretary for Arms Control Bonnie Jenkins said this at a meeting hosted by the Center for a New American Security on Tuesday. Jenkins called China and Russia's positions against the other 3 permanent members of UNSC challenging. Now, when asked if Washington is no longer pursuing denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula, she says the U.S. still hasn't given up and that they still want to denuclearize the North. South Korea commemorated the 68th Memorial Day on Tuesday to remember those who fought and sacrificed themselves for the country. During the main ceremony at Seoul National Cemetery, President Yoon stressed the importance of national defense and honoring the patriots. Our Kim Do-yeon reports.
As South Korea celebrates its 68th Memorial Day, President Yoon took the opportunity to emphasize national defense in front of fallen heroes at Seoul National Cemetery. Pointing towards North Korea's missile and nuclear provocations, he touted the new Washington Declaration and the enhanced support it ensures.
저와 바이든 대통령은 지난 4월 미 핵 자산의 확장 억제 실행력을 획기적으로 강화하는 워싱턴 선언을 공동 발표했습니다. 한미 동맹은 이제 핵 기반 동맹으로 격상되었습니다.
During his speech, he also took the chance to remind the country of the importance of remembering and honoring the fallen soldiers. Specifically, he repeated words heroes and freedom 8 times in his 9-minute speech, with words remember and respect also appearing for multiple times. This comes as the Yoon administration has reorganized the government to upgrade veteran affairs to full-fledged ministry status from the sub-ministry level. He also said the country has to pay tribute to the patriots and fallen soldiers to be recognized by the international community as a proper nation.
대한민국은 국민이 주인인 나라, 자유민주주의 국가를 건설하기 위해 독립과 건국에 헌신하신 분들, 공산 전체주의 세력에 맞서 자유를 지켜내신 분들의 희생과 헌신 위에 서 있습니다. 이분들은 국가의 영웅입니다.
During the ceremony, President and First Lady Kim Gun-hee also attended the burial of a recently identified fallen soldier from the Korean War, Kim Bong-hak, as his body was laid alongside his brother Kim Sung-hak, already resting at the Seoul National Cemetery. According to the spokesperson for the top office, President Yoon also paid an unexpected visit to the part of the cemetery where Vietnam War veterans and those that died fighting North Korean spies were laid. This part was made in 1981, and it was the first time a sitting president visited and paid their respects. According to an official at the top office, the move could be seen as a reminder of the alertness required for the nation with what's currently happening on the peninsula. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
As our Lee Kyung-in reported earlier, South Korea will take a role as a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council for 2 years starting next year. Then, what does this mean? How vocal and engaging can South Korea be on the international level? To answer these questions, we're joined by Professor Lee Hyun this morning. Welcome to the program.
Hey, good morning. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. South Korea has won a UN Security Council seat. This is the 3rd time for the country to serve as one of the 10 non-permanent UNSC members. What does this mean for South Korea? Why is it so noteworthy, Professor?
This is very significant because the Security Council has the primary responsibility to maintain international peace and security in the international system. And so South Korea's membership on the council is significant insofar as it now participates directly in voting on resolutions that are binding on all member states. And so because the world is so volatile today, especially with North Korean related issues, the situation in Russia and Ukraine, South Korea will be front and center now with respect to those discussions within the Security Council and give its direct input on those kinds of decisions. And so South Korea's standing now in the world community has, of course, always been growing since the last 20 years or so. And so this really is partly also symbolic in terms of Korea's position within the global community as being a legitimate world leader.
Right, then let's talk about the roles that the country will be in charge of for the next 2 years, right? What roles and responsibilities will South Korea be tasked with?
Well, as I mentioned, South Korea now will be in the discussion and directly involved in the debates regarding, statements and resolutions that are going to be passed by the Security Council. And so because now South Korea will be involved in those discussions very directly, its input will actually be very, very important because other countries will now lobby South Korea with respect to various matters around the world that require the Security Council's attention. And so South Korea will be able to, address those issues, but also, express its desires with respect to the international community, particularly in matters related to human rights, nuclear proliferation, and other areas where South Korea has a great interest in. And so this is really, I think, a big role to be played in the next 2 years, starting in 2024, when South Korea takes its seat on the Security Council.
Right, the decision comes at a very timely manner, considering all the challenges and urgent issues that we're facing here on the Korean Peninsula.
Absolutely. With respect to especially North Korean provocations, with the recent testing of the satellite missile launch, this is a topic of great concern to the region, and particularly South Korea, given the threats that North Korea presents to Seoul, particularly with respect to its missile technology and the development of nuclear weapons. And so there's great concern that North Koreans are thwarting these resolutions, which it must follow under United Nations resolutions.
Right. Now, speaking of that spy satellite you just mentioned, South Korean authorities are still working to retrieve the debris of the rocket that fell into the West Sea, right? It's been a week. Professor Lee, why is it taking so long? And when it is retrieved, how much information about the rocket can we actually find out?
Well, this is the debris of the rocket fell, about 200 kilometers west of South Korea, basically, and this is in the West Sea. And so the conditions there, of course, are not stable. And this is, we're talking about, varying depths with respect to the debris. So finding the debris itself is going to be very, very challenging. But once the debris is actually found, the idea here will be that the South Korean authorities, as well as others, including the United States, will be able to examine the type of rocket that was used and the state of technology of North Korea in terms of how far they have progressed with respect to this ballistic missile technology, which of course has been banned by the Security Council. And so now the question will be, how will the Security Council as well as South Korea and the United States respond to this incident?
Right. The authorities are resuming their operation today, and let's see how that goes. Before we let you go, according to a recent report from Japan's Nagasaki University over the weekend, on Tuesday, North Korea is believed to own 40 nuclear warheads. Now, that means the regime has secured at least 30 more nuclear warheads over the past decade. What does that mean? What's your take on this?
Yeah, it's very, very worrisome because, naturally, the whole idea of sort of the international system was to, especially in terms of rejecting North Korea's nuclear ambitions, if in fact this is true, then North Korea is, of course, even unofficially now a nuclear state. But in terms of its threat with respect to the region, obviously this is why the Washington Declaration that was recently announced between the United States and South Korea on the occasion of the summit between the two leaders, I think is very important because South Korea obviously doesn't have its own nuclear weapons. And so the question is if North Korea is able to then put them on missiles and somehow being able to deliver them, even not with respect just to ballistic missile technology, but short-range missiles and directly threatening South Korea, this is going to be of great concern because now the question is how will South Korea then respond given the proliferation that's happening on the peninsula? And I think this is going to be the question going forward is, what will South Korea do with respect to this threat? Obviously, given the United States' concerns in the region and Japan as well, this trilateral cooperation is going to be seen as more important going forward in addressing this real threat.
Indeed. Thank you so much for your insight and joining us this morning, Professor Lee Hyun.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Around 40,000 people are said to be evacuating after a dam in the southern Ukraine city collapsed on Tuesday. Both Ukraine and Russia are blaming each other for the dam collapse. Lee Seung-ja has more.
Thousands are being evacuated after the destruction of a dam in the Ukrainian city of Novokakhovka on Tuesday. According to President Vladimir Zelensky, some 80 towns and villages are at risk of flooding, with authorities saying some 40,000 people needed to evacuate as water is surging down the Dnipro River, creating a flood risk for the Ukrainian city of Kherson. Zelensky blamed the collapse on Russia, saying it's impossible for Ukraine to have done it from the outside, as the dam is under Russian control.
It is physically impossible to blow it up somehow from the outside, by shelling. It was mined. It was mined by the Russian occupiers, and they blew it up.
However, Moscow denies the allegations, saying that the dam's collapse was due to nothing other than an act of sabotage by Ukraine. The Kremlin added that Kyiv conducted the act to distract attention from a failed counteroffensive against Russian forces. Speaking to reporters, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said Ukraine was also trying to deprive Russian-annexed Crimea of the fresh water it receives from the reservoir. Meanwhile, White House spokesperson John Kirby said Tuesday that Washington cannot say conclusively who's to blame for the dam collapse, but added that the damage to the Ukrainian people and to the region will be significant. Despite the impact the dam collapse could have, President Zelensky says the incident will not affect Ukraine's planned counteroffensive operation. Taken to Telegram on Tuesday, Zelensky stressed that the destruction of the dam would not affect Kyiv's ability to deoccupy its territories. Zelensky says Russia acted chaotically in destroying the dam, ultimately allowing their own weapons to be flooded in the process. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The World Bank has raised its outlook for the global economy this year, but cut its 2024 outlook due to monetary tightening and war in Ukraine. Our economic correspondent Shin Ha-young has more.
The latest global growth outlook for this year has been set at 2.1%. That's according to the World Bank's Global Economic Prospects report released Tuesday, which has revised up its previous forecast of 1.7% from back in January. The revision comes as the U.S., China, and other key economies have proven more resilient than expected. But it's well below the 2022 growth rate of 3.1% due to geopolitical conflicts like the situation in Ukraine, supply chain risks, and monetary tightening around the world. The World Bank also cut its global growth forecast for 2024 to 2.4% from 2.7% in January, citing the ongoing effects of monetary policy, which has seen business investment reduced. It also raised concerns over the possibility of a further economic slowdown caused by stress in the banking sector. By region, the U.S. economy is expected to grow at 1.1% this year, while China's growth is expected to climb to 5.6% due to its recovery from COVID-19 lockdowns. However, the bank cut its previous 2024 forecast for both countries. In the Eurozone, growth is forecast to slow to 0.4% in 2023 from 3.5% in 2022 due to the lagged effect of monetary policy tightening and energy price increases. The outlook for South Korea's growth was not mentioned in the report, but the bank expects East Asian economies to improve alongside China's recovery. Meanwhile, on the back of the revised outlook, U.S. stocks closed higher on Tuesday. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 0.03%, while the tech-heavy Nasdaq gained 0.36%. The S&P 500 rose 0.24% to finish at its highest level since August last year. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Matthew Ashley, and we now turn over to stories from around the world. We begin in Haiti, where at least 54 people have been killed in floods and an earthquake. On Tuesday, the city of Jérémie was hit by a 4.9 magnitude earthquake that killed at least 3 people. Search and rescue efforts are underway in the city, and over 24 others have been reported injured. The U.S. Geological Survey says the earthquake occurred at a shallow depth of 10 kilometers. The earthquake came just days after at least 51 people were killed and 13,000 more were displaced due to torrential rains and flooding. Haiti is facing a humanitarian crisis amid gang violence and natural disasters. According to the United Nations, almost 5.2 million Haitians are in need of humanitarian assistance. Turning over now to the United States, former New Jersey Governor Christie has launched his 2024 presidential election campaign. This is Christie's second attempt at winning the seat after falling well short of the Republican presidential nomination in 2016. The former Trump supporter turned critic has joined a number of Republicans, all vying for the party's presidential nomination. Christie has accused sitting President Joe Biden and former leaders Donald Trump and Barack Obama of dividing America. His launch comes a day after former Vice President Mike Pence filed paperwork for his own bid for the Republican presidential nomination, But it will be an uphill battle for those candidates, as Donald Trump is currently leading the polls by a wide margin. Now, the PGA Tour announced on Tuesday that it will merge with rival LIV Golf. The new surprise partnership will also include Europe's DP World Tour and will form a new collectively owned entity aimed at unifying the game. The US-based PGA and its Saudi-backed rival have been at odds since LIV launched in June last year. The PGA filed a series of legal disputes against LIV. It accused LIV and its financial backers of interfering in PGA business by offering its players millions of dollars to break their PGA contracts. The PGA temporarily banned players that participated in LIV events and even considered a lifetime ban. The new partnership announcement has drawn criticism from some golf players and the families of the 9/11 terrorist attacks, who accuse the PGA of hypocrisy. And finally, the first man to run the 100-meter sprint in under 10 seconds has died at the age of 76. Once known as the world's fastest man, Jim Hines made history by running the 100-meter sprint at the U.S. Championships in Sacramento in June 1968 in a hand-timed 9.9 seconds. He then went on to the Mexico City Olympics in October that same year, where he ran the sprint in an electronically timed 9.95 seconds. This was to win his first individual Olympic gold medal. Now, born in 1946 in the U.S. state of Arkansas, Hines was initially interested in baseball and football, but was asked by his tricycle track running coach to try the sport.
Good morning. It's a cloudy start to the day. Central regions are under cloudy skies with some drizzle in the capital area and west of Gangwon-do province. Then later, please look out for passing rain in some upper areas from this afternoon into the evening, with thunderstorms and perhaps hail at times. Then afternoon highs will go up a couple of degrees higher in Gyeongsang-do provinces and nearby areas, with seeing highs jumping above 30 degrees Celsius this afternoon under sunnier skies. So do expect to have very high UV rays for those in the southern parts of the country. Daejeon and Gwangju will see a high of 28 degrees. Daegu and Gyeongju will be topping out at 31 degrees Celsius this afternoon. And breathable air quality expected nationwide today. And for the rest of the week, central parts of the country will see frequent showers, while the south remains mostly sunny. Then the chance of rain will last through the weekend. Meanwhile, east of Gangwon-do province remains dry, rising wildfire risk. So please be careful with anything that could cause a blaze. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That wraps up today's New Day at Arirang. Arirang News will be back at 12 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.